Hello again, football fans, and welcome to the RFL Draft Team Preview Series, Pittsburgh Pioneers Edition. So, just as I've been doing with the Chicago Cougars, the Toronto Huskies, the Cincinnati Hogs, I'm going through the teams in the RFL and what their RFL Draft might look like. The team previews as we head into the RFL Draft, which round one of the draft is on Friday night. So right now we're going to go through the Pittsburgh Pioneers. And like we have been in the past, we're going to take a quick look at the roster as a whole, the players that are free agents, right? Because this is a big piece of the puzzle, right? Like we're going to take a look at some of the guys that are free agents or potential free agents at the end of the season. And then we're going to look at the actual roster and the construction and the makeup of the current roster. And then we're going to kind of look at some of the draft prospects and see who's available, where they're picking, what might be available for them at that pick, and what might make the most sense for the Pittsburgh Pioneers. So we're going to go ahead and get right into it. I'll show you the draft picks that the Pioneers have. So the Pioneers are looking at 7 total picks in the draft. They do have a round 1 pick that is 11 overall, but they do not have a round 2 pick. So that first round pick for the Pioneers is very important because it's the only one that they have in the top 68 picks, 67 picks, right? So they pick 111 and then they pick 305. You'd like to think that even with that 305, you're going to get a guy that can be a starter, a potential starter, or certainly somebody that you like enough to develop and is that guy or is a guy that you can see for the future. So I'll go ahead and share my screen here and then we'll get a quick look at what the free agent situation looks like, or what the situation is for the Pioneers in terms of guys that they have to re-sign, contracts that they have to worry about. And so real quick here, we'll take a look. Brady Barman, phenomenal tight end, right? 83 overall, star tight end. You guys might remember him from the college series. He is going to be a free agent at the end of the year. I would imagine that this is a priority for the Pioneers. You certainly don't want to take a guy like Brady Barman. I want to say he was taken in the second round of the draft, if memory serves. You certainly don't want to take a tight end, a round 2 caliber tight end, and then just let him walk. So I got to think that Brady Barman is a priority for the Pioneers here. Kyle Bain, maybe less so much of a priority. You look at the contract that he's on now, the monies that he's making right now, and you think that's probably a guy that the Pioneers are going to let walk. Probably not a large market for a guy like Kyle Bain. I don't know if there's going to be a lot of teams reaching out. I know the Miners, us in particular, we were in the market for a backup quarterback, but we went out and we got our guy in Kurt Peterson. So I'm happy to have that. So I don't know how many other teams out there are actually looking for backup quarterbacks. If there are teams out there, then Kyle Bain could be a target. And for the Pioneers, then I would definitely suggest entertaining that idea and looking to maybe offload Kyle Bain at some point in the first half of the year, see what you can get in return. Even if you only get a 5th or 6th round pick, it's better than nothing because he's not going to play and you're going to get nothing at the end of the year. So if there's a team out there that is looking for a backup quarterback and they're willing to give Pittsburgh a 5th round pick, I think that's a deal that the Pioneers have to make. That 5th round pick is better than nothing, and you can use that draft capital to package with other potential draft capital to move up in the draft, to go get other guys that do actually fit what you're trying to do. Take a look at Jeremy Collins here, 82 overall, star dev on the edge. Okay, we'll get into him a little bit. Dak Sims, TJ Reynolds, Hunter Flanagan, Charles Raymond, veteran, was on our team last year. Didn't want to pay him the money that he was asking for. He's aging. He's regressing. He's on the backside of his career. And then you got Roland Kaiser. And then you got Claudison Ramsey, in the secondary at strong safety. So we got some guys here that we can talk about, some position groups that we can talk about here for the Pioneers. You guys can see the list right there. But now let's go ahead and take a peek at the depth chart for the Pioneers and what that looks like. So I mentioned Jeremy Collins, right? Well, at 30 years old and 82 overall, I don't know how much longer Jeremy Collins is going to be with the Pioneers. I talked about Charles Raymond. Same thing with Charles Raymond. How long is he going to be there? I believe last year on the minors, he was an 81 or an 82 overall, and he clearly he regressed down to a 79. So at the end of this year, he's going to regress even more. He's 35 years old. You don't get much older than that in the RFL. I would challenge any of you out there to name 5 players in the RFL that are 35 years old or more. And I don't know who those guys are. And so when you look at Jeremy Collins, you look at Charles Raymond, I don't know how much further I really have to go here. If the Pioneers only have one pick in the first 2 rounds of the draft, and that pick is 11th overall, they could certainly take an edge rusher. Again, Jeremy Collins, free agent at the end of the year, already 30 years old anyway. Are you going to resign him? Even if you do resign him, does he regress? What does he regress to? Charles Raymond, I just told you, he's already regressing quite a bit. He's 35 years old. Consider him gone. Right? And then you've got Dwayne Costin, 32 years old. Right? So that's not really of any help. He's probably not going to see the field much this year anyway, and he's 32 years old. And then you get down to Carmelo Townsend. So you've got basically the future of the edge rush for the Pittsburgh Pioneers rests in the hands of Carmelo Townsend. So he's 23 years old. Great. Check the youth box. He's got that in his favor. But at 71 overall, that leaves a little bit to be desired, right? So there is easily a scenario where the Pittsburgh Pioneers go edge rush with that 11th pick in the draft. And I'll get into who might be available with that 11th pick in the draft and why. For all the things that I just said about the edge rush, I don't know if that actually makes the most sense for them. But then let's take a look at some of the other positions here. So Jesse Newhouser, not going anywhere, just signed a long-term deal, paying him a boatload of money, and rightfully so. You've got Matt Reynolds, you've got Harvey Ishmael, Stephen Baltis, Matt O'Neill. When I look at these guys, I see Jesse Newhouser, I see Matt Reynolds, and I see Harvey Ishmael, right? But let's take a look at Harvey Ishmael. He's 28 years old. How many years left does he have? He has 2 years left. He's 28 years old. He's an 82 overall. He's got normal dev. He's got 2 years left on his contract. In my head, I'm looking at this, if I'm the GM of the Pioneers, and I'm saying Harvey Ishmael is not a guy that I want to rely on as an every down starter. I don't think that my team is best suited if Harvey Ishmael is on the field every single time on defense, every single play. I would rather have him be a guy that comes in, when fatigue sets in, wear and tear, formation subs, whatever it might be, take a look at his attributes. What are his strengths, right? And find plays, find situations, find schemes to work him in. But I don't know if Harvey Ishmael is that guy. So I could also say to you, well, maybe they go linebacker, right? Because again, Newhouser's there. He's not going anywhere. But even if you run a 3-4 where predominantly you're using middle linebackers and will linebackers and then the edge rushers, right? One, we've already established that they need to do something with the edge rush. But also, I could see a scenario where they do something with the linebacker position. Maybe that's go and get a middle linebacker. Maybe that's go and get a coverage linebacker. And then we'll go down to the secondary. I actually like the secondary here. Xavier Eves, I absolutely love him, right? I think Xavier Eves is one of the, one of those underappreciated, not talked about enough DBs in the RFL. Saito Torres, I mean, we've got Cody John, like the safeties here in Pittsburgh, you're feeling pretty good, right? 24 years old, 28 years old in Saito. And then at corner, you've got Xavier Eves, he's 24. Antonio Gomez, he's 23. Clausen Ramsey, again, free agent at the end of the year, but a nice guy to have. You've got that veteran leadership, right? He's kind of your third corner. And then even your fourth corner, I don't really have a problem with your fourth corner at all in James Harrow, right? Like you've got a 78 overall. He's still young, right? So if your fourth corner is a 78 overall that has the potential to maybe get to an 80, maybe like an 81, I think you're feeling pretty good about that if you're Pittsburgh, right? So for me, it really goes back to the defensive side, and it goes to the edge rush and also the linebackers, right? Like we can sit here and we can look at the offensive line a little bit if you want. Matt Wilcox, phenomenal. Nick Collins, great. 28 years old, not worried about him. He's probably got 2 more years at least before he really starts regressing. You've got Dak Sims. Again, he's an 80 overall. I like the size there, 6'7", 329. Like I like that for the right tackle position. Bennett Ferguson, I believe, was a rookie just last year, right? So already up to an 80 overall, 23 years old there. So I'm good with the offensive line right now. And because the Pioneers don't have a lot of draft picks, I don't know that I'm really looking at the offensive line with that first or with that third. Again, the biggest issue here for the Pioneers, all they have to really make a difference is the first round and the third round. They've got the 11th pick in the first round, the 5th pick in the third round, and the 14th pick in the third round. Those 3 picks right there are going to be the guys that you're hoping to get in positions of need, right? When you talk about positions of need versus positions of want, a need is something that you have to have that guy, because if you don't have him, then you're in trouble. A want is more like, yeah, I don't really need this guy. I've got someone here that's serviceable. I've got someone, maybe one of those guys that's a free agent at the end of the year. That's not necessarily a need because you have someone there. But if it's not a need right now and it's more of a want right now, well, then it's definitely a need at the end of the year if you don't address it now. And so that's where a want right now could kind of be a need right now if you don't have the right draft capital, if you're not able to make the right moves throughout the season. So for me, I'm just going to look at the defensive end. I'm going to look at the edge rushing linebackers. I'm going to look at the middle linebackers, right? Because we talked about Neuhauser, and he's there, but maybe you want, who's your middle linebacker 2, right? Because the middle linebacker 2 is very important, right? So let's go back up here. Where am I going? I'm totally blanking here. So you got Neuhauser, and then right now you got Matt Reynolds as your middle linebacker, and then Baltus is your middle linebacker 2, right? But at 76 overall and 28 years old, are you going to maybe move him off? Like, would they entertain the idea of Neuhauser being the middle linebacker, right? And then maybe moving some guys around. I don't know if this is the set depth chart in terms of positions and where guys are going to line up. But regardless, I think you'd like to have certainly 3, but really 4 linebackers. And they have 4, right? Like I'm not really looking at Matt O'Neill that much, but Baltus, Ishmael, Reynolds, and Neuhauser. Of those guys, the only ones that really stand out to me are Neuhauser and Reynolds. So I could entertain the idea of the Pioneers going linebacker. And so let's just take a quick peek at Peacon's rankings, right? Like we talked about um, all the rankings that you see and that I discuss here on these team previews. These are all Peacon's rankings, right? Like this is out there. This is for everyone to see. And that's all I'm going by. That's all I'm going off of. I don't have any kind of insider information. I don't know anything more than what you guys know. These aren't my rankings, right? Like these are Peacon's rankings. So I talked about the edge rush. Okay, yes, the Pioneers could address the edge. Well, at 11 overall, I don't. I'll tell you right now, Ethan Marks is not going to be there. At 11 overall, I feel pretty confident that Manny Rojas is not going to be there. However, I do feel pretty confident that Russell Shackelford, Randy Wilson, Sina Anoa'i, Will Wilfork, Troy Rubin, like these are all guys that are going to be in play at the 11. Now let's go look at the linebackers. Right? So if we take a quick peek at the edge rushing linebackers, you've got Nick O'Quinn. So I said at the beginning, I said earlier on, as much as I think the Pioneers have to address the edge rusher, and when I said that, I was really looking at the kind of like defensive end edge rusher, like that grouping. When I got to the linebacking group, if you remember, I said this might make more sense. And the reason that I say that is because Nick O'Quinn could be available at 111. I think there's a good chance that Nick O'Quinn is available at 111. Again, Ethan Marks, no. Manny Rojas, no. So if you're going to go that sort of defensive end edge rusher, well, then you're looking at the third guy off the board. Whoever that is for you, it's the third guy off the board. But if you're looking at the linebacker, and again, with the linebackers, you can move them around a little, right? Like yes, Nick O'Quinn is an edge rushing linebacker. However, if you know that you have that, well, then you can possibly manipulate the linebackers that you have on your roster a little bit more, because Nick O'Quinn can probably also play some type of linebacker, not just rush the passer. Even though that's what he should be doing, that's what he's best at. And then you've also got Hassan Bird, Raheem Underwood, Tyrese Evans. Like these are all guys, Rondell Smith. The issue that the Pioneers have is that all these guys that I just named are potentially in play at 111. However, I don't know if any of them are in play at 305 or 314. And that's ultimately where I think they're going to run into some trouble. And so they have to be very particular and very precise on what they do at the 111. If you want to look at true linebackers, you've got Montel Wright, you've got Ramon Flowers, Isaiah Ogletree. They could basically take the number one coverage linebacker, probably the number one edge rushing linebacker, and if they wanted to go middle linebacker, they could probably get the number one middle linebacker. At least there's a path for that to be available and for that to happen at 111. So the question is, would you take Brian O'Connor at 11? Would you take Montel Wright, Ramon Flowers, whoever you like there as the coverage guy, a Nick O'Quinn, who I think is clearly the number one edge rushing linebacker? Would you rather take one of those guys at 11? Or would you rather take a true defensive end type pass rusher, knowing that it's not Ethan Marks, it's not Manny Rojas, and it's probably the likes of Shackelford, Wilson, Anoa'i, Wilfork, depending on, again, who you like more. Maybe you like Randy Wilson, right? Like I could see a scenario where you might have Randy Wilson ahead of Russell Shackelford. but is that where you want to go? And so for me, those are the areas where I think the Pittsburgh Pioneers need to focus. And so it remains to be seen what they're going to do. Again, they have 7 total picks, but the 111 is the one where they really want to hit. And then I think you're just hoping, if you're a fan of the Pittsburgh Pioneers, you're hoping that with that 305 or 314, maybe guys like Sina Inoue, Will Wilfork, Troy Rubin, maybe those names fall and they're available at 3.5. I think if you could get a Sina, a Wilfork, a Rubin, a Demarius Regis, Tyrone Crawford, I think if you could get one of those guys at 305, you're feeling pretty good. And certainly at 314, and you can say the same thing about some of the linebackers that I mentioned as well, regardless of who your guy is. If you're looking at a Hassan Bird, a Raheem Underwood, a Tyrese Evans, Rondell Smith, I don't know how many of these guys are going to be available at 305 or 314. Hassan Bird, Raheem Underwood, like I think these guys from Hassan Bird all the way down to probably like Duke Cushing, I would imagine that in the first 2 rounds, we're going to see 4 or 5 edge rushing linebackers go in the first 2 rounds. Like that's not outrageous to think. So I don't know if you're going to, I wouldn't be counting on, one of these guys like a Duke Cushing. I wouldn't be counting on them to fall to 305 or 314. It's possible. But again, it's all going to be contingent, and it's all going to hinge on what are the Pioneers going to do at 111. That's the biggest thing for them, because then they're going to have to sit back and wait. They're going to pick once on Friday, and then they're going to pick twice on Saturday, but it's towards the end of the night on Saturday. Right. So it remains to be seen what the Pioneers are going to do. So yeah. And that's going to wrap up the Pittsburgh Pioneers team preview. Again, I've wrapped up the ARC North. I'm going to try, guys, to get through the entire league. It's extremely difficult with only 5 days left before the draft actually starts, and really 4 days technically before the draft actually starts. So I'm going to, as soon as I am done recording these, I am going to post them for you guys to check out so that I can try to get them out so you guys have as much time as possible. I am going to go division by division. I just finished the ARC North. I'm going to go into the NRC North next. So stay tuned for that, but appreciate you guys checking it out. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon so you can get notifications as soon as these are published. And until next time, take care, everybody.